welcome back. It's Christine again with the Artist Pod, and today we're going to talk about how to draw a bald eagle. So, let's get arting. Alright, here is the eagle, the bald eagle. They have a nice barrier at the bottom, you know, with the white. Creates a nice delineation of sort of where to stop a composition. And we're just going to get started. Up in this area, there's a mixture of... you can see some of the yellow skin under the white feathers, like really small, sort of short white feathers. So I'm going to probably do a layer of the yellow underneath first, and then layer the white on top. But first we're going to start with the white feathers kind of everywhere else. And we build up feathers much the same way that we build up fur. And we don't want it to be perfect, because if it's too perfect along the edge, especially on the side view like this, we'll question it. We're just following the contour of the eagle's head. And they have longish feathers, so especially as we come down along the back of the head, it can really increase the stroke length. They also have kind of this miffed expression where their little, I don't know, eyebrow, feathered eyebrow comes down, making them look miffed. A lot of birds have this feature where you'll have a bunch of feathers kind of coming up, angling up, and then a bunch of feathers angling down where they kind of meet at the back of the eye. And then you'll have just this little bit under here where the feathers are shorter, under the eye. Unlike the feathers, the beak needs to be a little bit more straight along the edges, but you know, you're still dealing with long strokes because it's, you know, a beak. It doesn't have feather length. Alright, we're going to have the light source coming from over here. Like always, that means it's above and in front of, not next to or behind. So as we're adding highlights and shadows, right, there's going to be some shadowing under here where the beak will be casting a shadow down. And then of course there'll be shadowing on the back side of the head as it comes down. And then all edges are in shadow, so even this edge on the side of the light source will be in shadow, because that figure, you know, it's rounding away from the light source. It's how you create the illusion of three-dimensional space. But on the side of the light source, it'll quickly go back into full highlight. So here, back into full highlight, and that's full pin pressure. And then just feather it into the shadow. Just following the contours of the lines we've already created. There's a little bit of an edge here, so I'm adding some shadowing right here because it juts forward before it kind of juts in. Alright, now you can see that this transition looks pretty harsh, so does this one. I did that knowing that I would need to temper that out, so I'm not going to put full pin pressure, but at the edge where the two, where the highlight's meeting the shadow, I'm going to very lightly just add more lines in until I temper off how deep that transition is. Make it look more natural. And I'll just keep doing it until it looks right. Right, if something looks wrong to you, it'll look wrong to other people. So just keep working on it until it looks right to you. So anywhere you have a shadow, you don't want a strong edge. You want that to be tempered. So now you know, there's that shadow on the backside and underneath the beak. You can see that it's there, but it's not overwhelming. It's much more subtle. Now we'll get the beak, and I'm going to put the layer for the beak, the yellow, under the layer for the feathers, which I just dragged it. So there's going to be shadowing where, you know, the top of the beak meets the bottom of the beak. There's also the tip of it is going to be in shadow because that's turned away, right? Light source coming from above, tip is bent down. So there's going to be a line of shadow on the edge of the light source, rolling into more shadow where the top of the beak meets the bottom, rolling briefly back into highlight before going back into shadow. So there's a lot of variation here. And I popped that on just so that I could see exactly where I drew the edge of the beak, which I kind of delineated, but I want to make sure that I keep that a nice clean line and I don't deviate. It's likely going to be a little shadow under here, right? You have the bottom of the beak coming through, so right against the mouth. A little bit of white right on the edge of this transition from, I don't know what it is, section of the beak. So I'm just going to very gently, not a lot, not full pin pressure, just have this transition have some white in it. And then I'm going to fade off the nose a bit. So, you know, this skin is going to be under the feather, so I'm not putting full pin pressure. To create the effect of texture, I'm kind of, you know, I'm going down and then up and making these small, quick kind of strokes. Light pin pressure again, just to be under there for the white, the sort of very light white feathers, but still have that textured appearance of the yellow underneath. There'll be areas where the feathers aren't as thick, but really let the yellow sort of see through it. So we'll see how that works. But I often do this with bird skin where I'm going up and down to create the texture. It's a really quick, effective way of mimicking something that has a lot of bumps and textures without having to individually draw out every single bump. All right, now for the white feathers. Now these are short. Shadows and highlights still apply, right? So there's this gap here. So in any area of the yellow where I think it's showing through a bit more, I don't want it to look like it's a shadow, so I'm just filling in extra yellow so that it's still just as bright. There's no shadowing, it's just clearly hopefully clearly that feathers are not as thick on top of skin. The last thing is the eye. Their eyes are yellow, but I'm not gonna do it as bright of yellow as this is. It's a little bit more of a grayish yellow. On a lot of birds, I fill in all the way around. I'm debating on if I should do this. I'll do that for the eagle. I may. Now with the light source coming, you know, from the right, like it's coming from over here. First thing I'm going to do is put a burst of highlight right here against the pupil, all the way underneath. And then we'll start filling in on the side of the light source the highlight. Get to the edge, it'll taper off. This highlight will connect all the way underneath the eye. There'll be a little shadowing by the pupil on this side. Now sometimes, and it's been a while since I've done this, this might be a good eye to do it with. Sometimes I'll create little squiggles. Typically if you do it, you want it to be a slightly different color. Let's see if this works. But it mimics the muscles in our eyes. Although this does a great job. You can also, I just, oops, not that much. Probably the wrong color too. Bit redder. I'm gonna do it, you know, it's gonna create squiggle, these little quick squiggles where I follow, you know, I'm aiming them in at the eye. I don't know if this is the right color yet either. You want it still to show up in the shadow, but you don't want it to be as much. And then you can build it if you'd like. Just quick squiggles up and down. Really thicken the area where there's more highlight. You can see kind of what it does. You want it to fill the whole section, so I don't want this to be without, like, needs to be all the way in by the eye. Basically the whole eye. And it's a nice, easy way to mimic that effect of muscles in the eye. Let's see what that does. And then the last thing we would do is add the light flare. It's one of the most important things. Always on the side of the light source into the pupil, so we're just going to have, you know, make sure it's in the highlight. So right, I'm not going to put it somewhere in the shadowed section. Make sure it's in the highlight. And we're just going to fill it. Alright, so that is how you draw a bald eagle. I hope that was helpful. In the floating nether next to me, I have other videos of art tutorials I have done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.